Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarane.
Oh, that's the problem, yeah.
That's a problem. Solved. So, there's a very special place. Everyone is aware how this is where Srila Prabhupada started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in July of 1966. ISKCON is another name for what is eternally always present, and that is the association of pure devotees. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the grand predecessor of Srila Prabhupada, his spiritual master, and the spiritual master before that, and before that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the 1800s, and he started a society called the Vishva Vaishnav Sabharaj, which means the association of topmost Paramahamsa swan-like relishers, pure devotees from all over the universe. Nice name. So, to try to achieve spiritual life completely purely, completely, individually, what to speak of collectively, Prabhupada actually writes in the 9th canto, is an ambitious proposal. So, Srila Prabhupada himself signed the legal incorporation of this holy Sangha of pure devotees that would expand from this humble little storefront when he was 69 years old. And his life prior to that, objectively looking at, was one of great struggle. He was a young man following the more or less main mindset or desire of the entire Indian nation, which was just to be that, to become their own nation and achieve independence from what was seen as a very oppressive colonial rule, British rule, the British Empire. And he became a follower of the main leader of that movement, or best known leader of that movement, Mahatma Gandhi, so much so that he gave up his diploma. Imagine going to college for so many years and you've passed and you're invited to come to graduation and get your diploma and certificate from the dean of the college, and you refuse. You walk away at the last minute to make a social, political, and ideological statement. So Srila Prabhupada did that. And then later he met around that same period, his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whose appearance day we're celebrating tomorrow. Such an astounding personality. Just to say a few things, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his time was what is known as the Bengali Renaissance. So the culture of Lord Chaitanya's standard of Vaishnavism, which was in the 1500s, was so incredibly spiritually high and impeccable that no one could match. And if you read authorized biographies, descriptions of Krishna's appearance as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his defeating some of the most long-standing misconceptions of spiritual philosophy, championing the cause of pure devotional service to Krishna, was practically never matched. Now, unfortunately, when a very powerful devotee or powerful spiritual leader departs this world, then over time things have a tendency to become materially contaminated, diluted, polluted, or the actual original pure essence becomes, it's not unalloyed devotion, it becomes alloyed. When we say unalloyed steel, it means it's pure. Alloy, there's some mixture in it. And there's three main types of contaminations: karma, gyan, and yoga. And basically all of these alloys are based on not being fully pure in one's desire to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is our constitutional position. Just like my pinky is meant to cooperate with the rest of the hand, and my hand is meant to do what my brain tells it to do. And one of the main functions of the hand is to supply food to the mouth to eat. Now, and when that happens, the whole body becomes nourished automatically. The hand, the pinky, is very happy putting the food in the mouth. Now, if the hand says, no, I don't want to do like that, I'll eat separately, it's not equipped to do that. So that seems like a pretty simple analogy, but it's quite right to understand, and that is what today's verse is, which we will get to. This is a long preamble, is about that. We are meant to be willing cooperators with the Supreme Brahman. We are little Brahman, and the Para-Brahman, the complete Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has expanded us simply for loving reciprocation. That is really the meaning of our very existence and identity. So, loving affairs with the Personality of Godhead is the topmost position in spiritual life, and that is what Lord Chaitanya's movement and his disciplic succession of pure devotees have come to give. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was in the prime of his life in the mid to late 1800s, and that was a time when Lord Chaitanya's movement had already been, Lord Chaitanya had departed the planet in 1534, so some 350 years had passed, and there's a term called sahajiya, which means taking things very cheaply. Real pure devotion, real pure love of Godhead, real spiritual life, because it's the highest attainment, will require the highest degree of sincerity, the highest degree of application, patience, tolerance, etc., saintly qualities. You know, people who glibly or cheaply or proudly say that they are, you know, followers of a certain religion, we have to ask, where is their austerity? Where is their penance? Where is their process to get free from material desires and actually achieve real sainthood? So in this Kali Yuga, this age that we're living in, everything more or less is counterfeit or bogus. It's fake. So a equipped transcendentalist, he's given intelligence by Krishna, just like a spiritual geologist, to detect real gold from fool's gold. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur made a great effort to separate this sahajiyism, this is a big subject matter, this so-called claiming to be devoted, which basically can be understood to be claiming mundane emotions and feelings, more or less based on identification with the body and mind as the self. We read in the first canto how Narada Muni, he corrected Srila Vyasadeva, who was the one who brought forth the Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, of which the Bhagavad-gita is part of, saying, are you satisfied with identifying objects of the body and mind and their enjoyment with the goal of self-realization? So a sincere person, he or she will come to realize that no amount of material gratification is going to satisfy my real soul, my real self. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur and also at that time with the British Empire and what is all these, science, Darwin's theory was coming in strongly. They were laying down the law that this is the way that, we all came to pass through evolution, and the British Empire and the intellectuals of the day just made out like the original Vedic culture was something primitive, barbaric, something that no intelligent person would, take part in. So the intelligentsia of India, particularly Bengal, the British made Calcutta, biggest city in Bengal, the crown of the British Empire. That's where all the spices and most of the riches came from. And Bengali people were very, very intelligent, and they were made to serve the British Raj and using their intelligence as clerks and accountants, and many of them were sent to London and other places. So the Bengali Renaissance were these type of intellectual Bengali people trying to synthesize the two, their original Vedic culture and this emerging scientific intellectualism, humanism, all these things. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, wasn't a compromiser like so many of those persons who were renowned as movers and shakers of the Bengali Renaissance. He was a reformer, and he prayed to Lord Chaitanya that it is not, your teachings have very much depreciated. It is not within my power single-handedly to reestablish. So you must send somebody from your own personal staff. In other words, you must send somebody from the spiritual world to come down and help me. That was his prayer. And that prayer was answered by, I believe, his seventh son. He had 10 children, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was a great devotee, at the same time a very responsible grihasta. He was married, he had 10 children, and the British, seeing his high capability, made him district magistrate, which is more or less being made the governor of Orissa, the Jagannath Puri temple, which is one of the Char Dhams, the 4 most sacred pilgrimage places in India. And when they had problems with, the British had problems with false personalities, imitating saintliness and taking the sentiments of the local people, fearing that they would cause an uprising against their rule, they brought in Bhaktivinoda Thakur to uproot, these types of people. So, this Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was an astounding personality, and Srila Prabhupada, who was the undisputed leader of his group, was urged by one of his friends in his group, 25 years old, to go see this Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Srila Prabhupada, he grew up in a very pious household. His father would bring in anyone who would wear the robes of a sadhu or a saintly person, because by Vaishnav culture, that if you feed and take care of saintly people in your home, you will achieve great blessings. So he was very liberal. And Srila Prabhupada, as a young boy and teenager, would see some of these people come and eat in his house and then go out and be smoking marijuana in the street or having illicit connection, and just collecting money and putting it in the bank, and just, people go to work and they'll wear an MTA worker's uniform or construction or whatever, you work clothes, honest job, but these people imitating a sadhu but living worse than a materialist. So Prabhupada said, I know all these sadhus, I know, I'm sorry, I don't have to go see another. But his friend was insistent, no, you must go, this one is different. And finally he dragged him and said, all right, and upon coming into the presence of this great saintly person, even before introductions and, pleasantries could be exchanged, he said, you are an intelligent young man. He mentioned his friend also, you too, but particularly to Prabhupada, you are an intelligent young man. why don't you teach Lord Chaitanya's movement all over the world? And Prabhupada was astounded, what? And then he just brought up, which was like the sentiment of the day in 1922 India, that the cause of independence from the British Raj was in itself God. The people's cause was God. And, religious life and these types of things are a luxury that can only be afforded after we get, and Gandhi created a slogan to the British, quit India, get the British out, by all means. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta defeated that argument, that real independence is independence in pure devotional service, and that's for every living being in all countries and in all species of life. So he was so much struck with wonder with his mode of presentation and his astounding stature as an authorized acharya that he immediately dropped his idea that he was a follower of Gandhi and said, I accepted him as my spiritual master immediately. Not officially, that came later, but within my heart, I've met such a saintly person. And after 2 or 3 hours, they came out into the street, and his friend said, so, what did you think? And he told him, I've met a very nice saintly person. Lord Chaitanya's movement is in the hands of a very expert devotee. And then Prabhupada revealed later, he would tell years later, I was never defeated by anyone in my life, but he defeated me. But it wasn't a loss, it was an immense gain. Like if you get defeated in forensics club or argument or something, and then but to be defeated, you're holding on to some idea. But the pure devotee, he doesn't so much defeat that idea as much as he replaces your cherished notion with something by far superior, and you feel yourself so much the gainer. So this is 1922. Then he's initiated, and he sees his spiritual master maybe only a dozen times. And his spiritual master departs this world on December 31st, 1936. And Prabhupada had written a letter to him just 2 weeks earlier, what personal service can I do for you? And he repeated the very same thing that he had told him when he was a young person, only 25 years old, on the very first meeting. I think that you should turn yourself into a very good preacher in the English language to impress upon those not conversant with the language of the already existing members. And this will do good for you and to those who will help you. Wow. So Prabhupada meditated on that very, very deeply. And what happened right after that? The institution that his spiritual master had founded, the Gaudiya Math, like this is ISKCON, an institution, it fell into infighting amongst the leaders, and a very sorry situation, but the whole thing splintered into many different groups. There's many different opinions, but the practical, unified, cooperative power of all of them working together under the one solid instruction of the pure devotee, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, ceased to exist. So Prabhupada, what to do? Then World War II broke out. Then his family was uncooperative. His business failed. Then, after World War II, you think everything would be peaceful? No. The Britishers' last kind of jab to India and Pakistan were one nation, partition, which tore the subcontinent in half. Millions of people lost their lives in terrible bloodshed. Then, the leaders of India, Pandit Nehru, he said, what is it? That we'll make the factory the new temple, while the religious sentiment to the people is holding back our country. So in the minds of most people then in India, our religion is just, and we should become industrialized, modernized. And Prabhupada writing to someone he was trying to elicit help from in the 1950s, I'm simply crying alone in the wilderness. Nobody would take him seriously. And finally, after great struggle, he ended up here in New York City at the age of 69 in 1965 and went through a very tough year here in New York in obscurity, poverty, old age, ill health. Just like we had this 2 weeks from Christmas to like the 8th of January. My goodness. They had a similar winter like that in 1965. Ridiculously cold temperatures, a lot more snow than what we had. Prabhupada's only benefactor was a Mayavadi practitioner, which is like someone who believes you're God, I'm God, there is no personal God, and everything is just formless, homogeneous oneness. This is more demoniac and more averse to pure devotional service than even the most gross hedonistic materialism. So, Prabhupada had to deal with that. And finally, some people that he met, the beatnik transforming hippie movement at the time, some of those people were frequenting this Mayavadi Guru's thing. They met Prabhupada and they helped him out. They have what was called AIR, Artist in Resident Loft. So they fixed him up in one place, 94 or 92 Bowery, which is right in the heart of Chinatown. That time was Skid Row, Bowery Bums, and it was very bad at that time. Anyone who grew up or lived in New York, around the area I did at that time, it was like the worst place to be, And anyway, so Prabhupada had come here to teach the pure message of Krishna consciousness onto the order of his spiritual master, and it's greatly successful. So this is a very sacred place. There is the Lila Amrita, the biography of Srila Prabhupada, written by one of Prabhupada's first young people who joined him. His name was Steve Gorino. He was initiated as Satsvarupa, and then, of course, Satsvarup Das Goswami. His picture is there. He's in the Prabhupada at Tompkins Square Park. In the bottom right, he's with a turtleneck shirt, and he's so he was a writer, and Prabhupada used him. And it was asked of Srila Prabhupada in his last days and weeks, and Prabhupada said that Satsvarup Maharaj should write my biography. So they're describing the incorporation of ISKCON. It wasn't just a former curiosity shop turned into a temple. It was a sacred place of pilgrimage where the pastimes of the personality of Godhead could be taught and preached. It was a holy place dedicated to the pastimes of Krishna, a base where an army of devotees could issue forth and chant the holy names of gods in all the streets and towns and cities of the world. From this little storefront. So that's what happened. Actually, Prabhupada came back to Calcutta triumphantly in 1970. In just 4 years, tremendous success. He had 54 temples. And Prabhupada's idea, okay, they want to imitate the Americans and Europeans, so I will convert the most beautiful boys and girls of America and Europe and bring them back as astoundingly devoted to the principles of prema bhakti, and it will set people that they'll do a double take. And that's exactly what happened. And some of the Prabhupada's contemporaries, and maybe those who had lived through the British Raj, maybe we're talking 1970, so people who were born, who were 50, 70 years old, when they saw what Prabhupada had done, Prabhupada came back like a triumphant hero. He left India, in obscurity. You know, he left on a freight boat, a free ticket, 5 weeks at sea. And some of the people who were helping him thought this would be a noteworthy story because, you know, at that time, Indians weren't in America. There was no visas. You know, there was just, it was a lockdown. You know, so for a Swami to come over here was a big thing. You know, and so, but no newspaper would think it would be. Finally, like just a Calcutta Bengali daily thought, okay, and they printed a small little article like on one of the back pages. Prabhupada came back a hero. It was front page news nationally. Wherever he went, he would do pandals with 25,000 people in attendance. And some of those people of that age group, they had tears in their eyes, saying that Swami Bhaktivedanta has achieved, lack of a better word, revenge for what they did to us for 250 years. Prabhupada was taking a walk in Regent's Park in London, and he asked his disciples to pick some twigs from a willow sapling. He would use them as like toothbrushes. And there was like a park ranger there, and he got into a big argument with, you know, Prabhupada's disciples, young people. They were going to write a ticket, and Prabhupada just stopped. And Prabhupada let it go, and he just stopped, put down his cane, and he looked right in the man's eyes and said, "Your country raped and pillaged my country for over 250 years, taking all the wealth and anything they wanted, and now you won't even let us take a twig." And the man was like, and that was the end of it, you know. So, Prabhupada met an old childhood friend, a Calcutta friend. Actually, Prabhupada was in San Francisco at the height of the hippie, and they opened a temple, and they did the mantra rock dance, and one of Prabhupada, they said, "Swamiji, isn't this kind of, you know, like far out for you, seeing all these crazy people?" And Prabhupada said, "This is nothing. I'm an old Calcutta boy." So anyway, what to speak of, a pure devotee is not faced by any type of so-called unique manifestation of the modes of material nature, you know, because he's situated in the triumph of pure self-realization. So this friend met him and was very pleased to see his old friend, and told him of a yogi who was able to make an apple appear behind somebody's ear. Miracle. And Prabhupada said, "Wow, that's very good." Just like I went to America with no money, no support, nothing. I simply had my Bhagavatams and a bag of cereal and a pair of hand cymbals, cartels. I came to New York and I sat down under a tree, Prabhupada called it Tompkinson Square Park, and I just simply chanted Hare Krishna. And some very nice boys and girls came and sat down and chanted with me, and they wanted to hear about Krishna. And we started the center. And then some of those nice boys and girls, they said we should start a center in San Francisco. And we did. And some of those boys and girls then went on to open up a center in London, and then we have one in Hamburg, in Montreal, in Los Angeles, Boston, and in just 4 years, we have over 54 centers. And in each of those centers, we have so many apples. So whose mystic potency is greater than Prabhupada? So if you do something for Krishna, then the result will be more than you can even predict or imagine. But it has to be purely for Krishna. Prabhupada would say, Krishna could give you the entire world in 18 days. But what would you do with it? So, this is the place where Srila Prabhupada came. He had brought the Bhagavad-gita. One more story and then we'll read the verse. This is a story from Brahmananda Prabhu, who is seen in the picture dancing with his arms upraised and beads around his neck, one of Prabhupada's first helpers. Actually, he and Satsvarup Maharaj were donating their paycheck from their substitute teacher, Board of Education job, and caseworker for the welfare office, which at that time was near the police station, the 9th precinct on 5th Street, between 1st and 2nd Avenue. And because everybody was like a hippie, a beatnik, or whatever they were. So, how to pay the $196 1966 rent for the storefront and apartment 2C in the rear court building over here. It was a lot of money. Pass a basket around, everybody put a dime, a quarter, maybe $1. That was a lot of money back then. And $3.50, something like that. So they were paying for the storefront. So, Prabhupada, this Bhagavad-gita, didn't have commercial value because it's just about Krishna consciousness. There's no flowery language and scholarly footnotes and all types of, fanciful interpretations that, pat your false ego on the back and say that you're God, It's about surrender and, So Allen Ginsberg, who was an early supporter, he tried to get it published. He was with people who would publish his books. So there was an album made of Prabhupada's chanting Hare Krishna. The chanting of Hare Krishna in the parks here. It was in the fall, and it made a big hit. And in December of 1966, they made a record. And that record went all over the place. Ultimately, George Harrison from the Beatles got a hold of it. He and John Lennon got turned on to chanting Hare Krishna even before they met Prabhupada or the devotees. So, $3 for the record album, and you can mail your request here to 26 2nd Avenue, and we'll mail it out to you. So Brahmananda, he had a little desk at the front there, and he would, receive the mail and bring it to Prabhupada's attention. And a letter came from Macmillan, and what was it, Macmillan and their British equivalent, Collier, what is it? Anyway.
Collier.
Yeah, big publishing. So they had something 3rd Avenue, a big skyscraper, 52nd Street, and they're, someone from Macmillan is asking for the record album, and Prabhupada told him, you go there in a suit and tie and you hand deliver it. And you tell them that I have a Bhagavad-gita to publish by a Swami from India. And they will publish it. So Brahmananda's like, just do what I say. So he went there and found the person who was asking for the record, and much to his disappointment, it was just a clerk in the mailroom. Just somebody just counting numbers. Nothing to do with, and he just and right at that time that he was meeting the clerk and bringing the record album, then a Mr. James Wade, the senior editor, came in. And the clerk, very respectful, introduced him, Mr. Bruce Scharf, that was Brahmananda's name. This is Mr. James Wade, the senior editor of Macmillan. And he just found himself, I'm just going to do what Prabhupada says, don't think, just do, like we would say on Sankirtan to get off the mental platform. Said, I have a Bhagavad-gita to publish, written by an Indian Swami, by a Swami from India who's here in New York City. And the man was like, you're kidding. That's just what we need. To complete our religion. We have a Torah, we have a New Testament, we got a Koran, we got a I Ching, we got a but we don't have a Bhagavad-gita. Bring it tomorrow, we'll publish it. And Brahmananda, all he do is to keep his, and he just flew back downtown to hear, and Swamiji, and Prabhupada was very cool and said, yeah, like he knew it was going to happen. So these types of miracles just surround a pure devotee. So this is Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita, As It Is. And I know myself, I became a devotee by getting the Bhagavad-gita. Just my eclectic and not so much, I was not eclectic. If I found something good, I would go with it. But I was searching. When I finally saw this, that was it. So the words of a pure devotee are made potent and authoritative. And Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, his name was Bhakti Siddhanta. Siddhanta means the final conclusion. Like here, like in a big city like New York, you're always going to get a runaround. You have a problem, you go to this, say, well, we don't do that. We go over there. Well, they lie. They don't tell you the truth. Harry S. Truman, he put a thing on his desk when he was the president in the late 1940s. The buck stops here. So the pure devotee, the buck stops with him. He will only give you what is the version of Krishna. And Prabhupada would say, you can read in the beginning, that before I came, there were over 400 editions of Bhagavad-gita. But not one person became a devotee by reading any of them. But when we presented Bhagavad-gita As It Is, so we're very, very fortunate. This is the end of my preamble or introduction. Okay. To be reading Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita in the place where the Krishna consciousness movement emerged, not so much from a storefront, but from his pure heart and loving desire to please Krishna, and to want to take care of all of us. One realization that Prabhupada's disciples had again and again, that Prabhupada really, really cared for us. And because he cared for us, we wanted to give our life to him. So that same love and caring is there for all of us, even though seemingly Srila Prabhupada has left the planet some 40 years ago. If we take shelter in his words and his instructions, Vapu and Vani, here we're associating, you see me, I see you, that's physical association. But Vani is in the sound vibration. Actually, many Prabhupada disciples, maybe those who had joined later on, Prabhupada raised an army, and those who joined later on were more like the buck privates and the foot soldiers, and the big leaders were, anyway, at the time. But as years go by, and Prabhupada said, all of my disciples will have the legacy to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So the level of advancement has nothing to do with so-called managerial status or rank. That so they didn't meet Prabhupada. Maybe they joined and in a year or two went by, they were initiated by mail, and they're listening to Prabhupada's lectures on tape, and finally they get to be physically, and Prabhupada is speaking, and their realization, it's no different than hearing the recording. The person and the sound vibrations one and the same. So I'm in that category. I joined this movement in 1978. Prabhupada had left the planet just 1 year earlier, and it was explained to me right from the beginning that Prabhupada was gone, but you can have his association in Vipralamba Seva. Vipralamba means separation. Like we're separated from a loved one or a friend. It's lamentation, but there's transcendental feelings of longing for reunion or even meeting for the first time with the one that we love. But that's not ordinary lamentation. There's spiritual feelings which are imbued with great transcendental knowledge and actually pacify the heart. So that's how Srila Prabhupada envisioned his Shiksha Guruhood. Like it's described, Prabhupada as the preeminent instructing spiritual teacher for everyone on this planet who takes the pure Krishna consciousness. And he would say that his books are the law books or the Siddhanta for the next 10,000 years. So we're reading verse 5. This chapter is called the Yoga of the Supreme Person. It's a chapter where Krishna is giving intimate and, let's say, technical knowledge of himself in terms of knowing the difference between matter and spirit, and between in the spiritual energy, those who are subordinate spirit and the controlling spirit, namely himself. So it might seem a little difficult, but ultimately it's very easy that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are all his emanations. So this is verse 5 of chapter 5, 15. How do you do? Should we like say responsibly or just read it and word for?
I think you'd rather the latter. It sounds like, right?
I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
We go either way, but I think you do the latter.
Okay, because I gave a long preamble, you know. I don't get to give
a good one though.
When me and Atmanivedana were in Boston in the 90s and such, I gave a lot of classes, but somehow my service here in New York, I don't give so many classes.
Really?
Not so many. Some. Well, anyway.
Maybe
But so anyway.
Maybe we can do something about that.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. You know that I'm coming here and taking an hour off early from Harinama. See, it's not so painful after all, right? Okay.
Pros and cons to everything.
Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinibrita kama tvanver vimukta sukha dukkha samgner gachanti amudha padam avyayam tat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Should we say together so we all get a chance to use our voice? Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So to sit here, this is the exact place where Prabhupada would speak from, is a very humbling experience. So these are Prabhupada's words, so let's deeply enter into the meditation that Prabhupada is speaking directly to us right now. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. Because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature, it is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know, by the cultivation of real knowledge, that he is not Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is freed from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. Is anyone in this room not a U.S. citizen? Okay, I'm not asking you to raise it. You're among friends. It's not embarrassing. So isn't all the, the visa and now they made this crazy agency called Homeland Security, right? And, green card and, and going into the country, overstay and this and that and blah, blah, blah. If you're waiting you can't go home to India, you got to stay here, blah, blah, blah. And then tit for tat. Then when we go to India, I lived in India for 12 years. And at that time, they would give you a 5-year entry visa. Multiple entry, no problem. Now, okay, you're making it tough for the Indians, we'll make it tough for you Americans. And now, you don't get an entry visa, you can only get a student visa. Student, you're 50 years old, why are you going to school, What course is your thing? What are the syllabus? What grades did you get? You have to go through this whole thing, and then this and that. Foreign registration office, you have to, and they like, who are you? Come back tomorrow, like the Wizard of Oz. Come back tomorrow, just all this. Or actually, Prabhupada was refused entry to Singapore because there's some type of group there that thought the Hare Krishna movement was a threat. They went to the government and said, these are bad people. Still to this day, you should not go to Singapore dressed as a devotee. Vijay, our book distribution Vijay, and you're someone about my age, he came there wearing yogi pants, a kurta, had neck beads. He didn't know the story. So he had like a 12-hour layover. Something was going to go to a hotel. He said, excuse me, sir, are you a Hare Krishna? Yeah, I'm a Hare Krishna. You heard of Hare Krishna? Come with me. They brought him to the dungeon at the airport, and he stayed in like a detention cell, and they escorted him to the flight and like that, So Prabhupada compared to, of course, here dogs are very well behaved. They're on a leash, but has anybody ever seen dogs in a third world country or in India? They're very territorial. What do they do? Ruff, ruff, ruff. Who are you? So Prabhupada compared these Homeland Security, border security to simply barking dogs. This is my country. Who are you? What are you doing? So that's what Prabhupada is saying here. This false notion that human society is the proprietor. And Prabhupada would say about this America, the white man came and took it from the red Native American Indians, and they're holding it, and after some time their American empire will be finished, and then new people will take advantage, When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false association caused by familial, social, and national affections. It's just now they're beginning what Prabhupada very much wanted, and which was envisioned by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Oh, for that day when the fortunate American, German, French, British, and would join with their Bengali brothers, chanting Jai Sachinandan Gaur Hari in Navadvip Dham, the holy place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. When will that day be? So 1974 was the first official Mayapur festival, and then it simply grew. And now that we have, they're building like a great temple, the Sri Chaitanya Chandradoya Mandir, which is even larger than St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, Rome, and be a very famous temple. It's almost complete. Actually, this year they're raising the chakra on the top dome. Many devotees are gathered there, and it is the United Nations, true United Nations. And actually, before I became a devotee of Krishna, I didn't know people from all over the world, but now I have friends all over the world, and mostly not by going to where they live, but by meeting them in Vrindavan and Mayapur, which Prabhupada would say would become the center of the world. Not New York City or London or Paris, but Mayapur and Vrindavan, because these are the places of Krishna, not the places of the materialists. This faulty association binds one to the material world. Prabhupada would say, all right, you're attached to being an American, you're attached to being a New Yorker, okay, but by all your karma and all your sinful activity, you can be a rat or a cockroach, in the neighborhood that you're so attached to. That's the law of karma. After this, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. One one should accept only those things set aside for himself, his personal quota, and not should encroach upon others, knowing well to whom they belong. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from the dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge, then it is possible for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, we'll see by and by. Actually, in the 13th chapter, it's described what are objects of knowledge or activities that will help one to understand real truth. And that's, let's see, humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. That we accept what we need to keep our body and senses. We eat properly, we sleep in a warm place, we have proper clothing and proper atmosphere, all these things, not that false renunciation. Absence of false ego, the perception of evil, of birth, death, old age, and disease. A devotee was very sick with leukemia, and it was brought to Prabhupada's attention that if he undergoes chemotherapy, he could have a normal life for a few months more, they claim. Whereas otherwise he would die very soon, within a matter of weeks. And the devotee didn't want to take the chemotherapy. He wanted to come back to the temple. So they said this to Prabhupada, normal life. He said, what is normal life? Normal life means no death. And if he comes back to the temple, then he becomes free of death and achieves normal life. So this is the real evil, and that's what all these people running around all proud and so cocksure of themselves, they set aside the real problems. Birth, death, disease, and old age. Just like we've all gathered here, we've all come from where we came from, and when it's all done, does everybody know where they're going when they leave this 26 2nd Avenue? Does anybody not have a plan or not have a place to go? Or, know how they're going to get there and what's going to happen, what's going to be there when they get there? So we're confident, we're peaceful, right? So a pure devotee, he knows when he leaves this body, he's going back home, back to Godhead. That's Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pretty. To those who are constantly devoted and worshiping, I give them the sound and solid intelligence how they can come to me. Just like how we know we're going to get on I left 40 minutes to come here from Grand Central, and the trains were just so cockeyed and crazy that I ultimately had to run the last 6 blocks down 2nd Avenue. Because, it's just the trains and the bus, it was just a madness, but it's like the subway and buses in New York is like you have to be an accomplished player of chutes and ladders, to, like if something goes wrong, readjust, So
you can take a taxi. I'll make it up to you.
No, I was quicker to walk because there was a gridlock,
Oh, okay. That's true.
So a pure devotee has all complete information. Birth, death, old age, and disease are for those who identify with the body. And to not identify with the body and understand one's real spirit soul, that is confidential knowledge, which you've read. That is only awarded by Krishna to a pure devotee. No one else can know that. Everybody else just simply speculates. Or, like, what is that animal? The ostrich put his head in the sand, or the rabbit just freeze, or the deer in the headlights, or the rabbit just make believe, I'll just freeze and maybe it'll just go away, That is the most astounding thing. Everybody sees that everyone else is going to die, those who are older. But somehow, I'll get through. Or material, medical science, what is that, cryogenics or something? We'll put you in a tent, and when we find the cure to this disease, then we're going to wait. This is crazy. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place. This is a solitary place, because a solitary place means a place where we don't have to be influenced and come under the rule or dictation of the materialists and the non-devotees. So a place where only the principles of Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion, are maintained, that is also a solitary place, by definition. Which, the very next statement, detachment from the general mass of people and their ways. That means we don't watch too much TV or any movies, read non-devotional literature, or even social media that's got the ideas and concepts of those who are not devotees, because such things are saturated with the lower modes of material nature, and Prabhupada said austerity of the mind is to simply expose one's mind and consciousness to pure elements and pure knowledge. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should take advantage. That is austerity of the mind. And the mind wants to, it might, in the beginning that might be difficult to do, to awaken that taste, but after you get going, then when one experiences the ruchi, or pleasure, of associating with Krishna in that way, then the Ladini Shakti, the pleasure-giving potency of the Lord, becomes so much pronounced in one's consciousness that one will not accept any other type of pleasure. So there's the pleasure of the peacocks and swans, or the pleasure of the crows who just want to pick at the garbage dump. So mundane sense gratification, which keeps one in illusion and might seem like happiness, is just like picking garbage out of the refuse tank. Accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth, all these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So there is a process to achieve self-realization, a process to gain the pleasure of Krishna. That is surrender. Not surrender like, oh my God, wave the white flag, hands in the air, I got you. But out of love. And on that platform of loving reciprocation, our real independence comes to play, and when it reaches such a height in the elevated stage of devotion that Krishna comes under the control of our loving feelings. And if we decide to do something, in that pure state of consciousness, Krishna accepts that, and in a sense he becomes a servant of us in that pure devotional mood. Prabhupada said, my spiritual master ordered me to preach in the West. And I've done that. Now, what I want to do is preach in India. Because Prabhupada struggled there for like 40 years, So now he wanted to reset India on fire. Because India is the place where Krishna and the Vedas come from. So if Indian people take it seriously, then that's the real thing that Indian people have to give, is pure devotional service. They're not good at imitating American and European and Japanese technology. It's never as good, Anyway. So Krishna reciprocated with that desire. It's a competition. Krishna, the devotee, wants to spread the glories of Krishna so that everyone can get the love of Krishna, and Krishna wants to facilitate that desire more and more. So Prabhupada describes this as the most congenial form of intimacy, and one can realize this as one progresses in devotional service. Taking the spiritual life doesn't mean giving up love and reciprocating love, but it means to perfect it to the highest degree. One Hatha Yoga guru kind of giggly guru of the 60s was here. I forget his name. He went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, I love you. Kind of, Prabhupada said, yes, I love you too, but not this skin love. Prabhupada said the symptom of love, one who actually loves Krishna, is that he wants his Lord's name and fame to be spread all over the world so that people can become free from repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. And Prabhupada gave us the most powerful method and mood of self-realization, following in the footsteps of the great devotee Prahlad Maharaj, who said that I do not wish to be liberated alone, to go back to Godhead alone, leaving aside all of these poor people. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking your shelter, one cannot be happy. Like it said, being freed from happiness and distress. Here it's Saturday night and everybody's running around. All the ladies are all dolled up and the guys are all handsome and dates and we're gonna have a night on the town and this and that, and they seem so happy. Not happiness. Happiness and distress is the same thing on the material level. It's all based on ignorance of one's real happiness. It's like a Ferris wheel. Okay, we made our money, let's go out and party. And you go down to the bottom. We come and we attend service here. There's a Bhakti Center. We're going there, Mangala. So our apartment is on Pitt Street. That's Avenue C below house. So I got a good 15, 20-minute walk over here, especially Friday, Saturday night, even in the cold weather. 2, 3 in the morning, it's like, here it's a little bit fresh, but by that time it's like zombie land. Everybody's like drunk and crazy, and it's like vomiting. The garbage pails have been thrown all over the place, and fist fights, and the boyfriend and girlfriend arguing, and the slapping real hard, and curse words. The party's over, my friend. The one cannot be happy. Therefore, I'm simply concerned with love for them. This is a very high platform, to not be concerned my own welfare, but actually this method of being concerned for others, one will automatically advance by leaps and bounds. Krishna will make assured of that. And that is the process that Srila Prabhupada is giving, demonstrating, and recommending. And so there's different methods of self-realization, but we're hearing what is the topmost method. And Krishna says, Priya Kritama, there'll be no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there be ever one more dear. A Brahmin is understood as one who leaves a place cleaner than when he found it. I mean, that's just kind of normal. Like you train children or anybody ever take care of kids and try to get them to clean up, Anyway, so you can come into a place and it's dirty, and if you have to live there or be there, you're going to want to clean it up. So we have to live in this world for however long we're here. So it's a world where people are, by majority, not devotees. So it's our job to try to fix that. Now, one thing is for certain, paritranayat sadhunam vinashayat duskritam, that Krishna comes for pleasure meeting with the devotees. This material world is kind of like, especially in this Kali Yuga, like a, what is that, Play-Doh? It squeezes the mold out. It's like, it's just so bad. It's like, those who are maybe a little bit, those who are sincere, but kind of thinking, oh, it's nice, bewildered by, Actually, Prabhupada said of places like San Diego and Hawaii, if there's any enjoyment in this material world, it's in San Diego, Hawaii, because it's very nice. Prabhupada came to London, and, some kind of sarcastic, antagonistic kind of reporter, why have you come here? To teach what you have forgotten, God, and then, what's your conception of London? London is hell. It's always cloudy, miserable, and raining, whereas in India, the sun is always shining, And then the man was like, he was defeated in that, and Prabhupada, seeing he was a little hurt, said, "Of course, it's a great credit to you British people that you have created such a civilization in such a climate, you know." Same here in New York, you know. So there's many, many people in this human form of life who are looking for what is the ultimate boon of this goal of human life. And certainly, without the pure knowledge of Bhagavad-gita as it is, will be frustrated and destitute. I mean, I can think of myself, if I hadn't come across this, you know, what my life would have been. Shudder the thought, you know. So there's many other people like that. Any pure devotional principle teaches that one should look at others as one should look at oneself. Do unto others as one would have others do unto you. These are common principles. So a pure devotee cannot sit idly by. He must be active to distribute Krishna consciousness. So, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. What should we do?
Maybe you take a question.
Any questions or comments?
He asked if you have a question.
I resonated with the party goers. I live on 17th Street in Chelsea.
Okay.
So my sister and I were saying the other day how we can tell what time it is.
Right.
You hear them giggling coming down the street, and yelling coming back up.
Right.
4 o'clock in the morning, and they wake everyone up. So
Right.
it's like, you know, we're thinking this is what this world is like now. This is what Chelsea's like now.
Yeah.
So you quickly get out of it.
Right. It's the East Village and Alphabet City.
Yeah.
You can set your watch to it, right?
Okay.
Just like in the village in India, they have roosters, and they at the break of dawn, cock-a-doodle-doo. So you don't need an alarm clock. You're just going to wake up, you know. So these are the modes of material nature that the morning is very conducive. Like you see, anybody who's going to be awake at like 5, 6, 7 in the morning, you know, are very clear-minded, they're very thoughtful, they're, you know, not the type of people who are going to commit violent activities. And then, you know, by like 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, mode of passion, activity, running, this and that. And then, you know, after a full day of passionate activities, then one's tired, one wants to just go home and go to sleep. And then, you know, the best of them, or the worst of them, whichever you want to say, they want to go out and drink and have illicit activities and, you know. Illicit sex and intoxication is like, you know, the most facility that the bewildered, conditioned soul has to try to think that they're God. You know, so people who are, you know, by nature understanding that God is great and I am subordinate, they're not going to be so much attracted to such activities, to do them in profusion, you know, or regularly repeat. Also gambling, meat eating also. So it's very good that there's more of a consciousness growing, you know, when we were kids, you know, like to be a vegetarian or to, you know, be concerned about the ingredients in your food, people would think that you're kind of peculiar, you know. But now it's a standard. And that's right. There's a chapter you can read, The Modes of Material Nature, chapter 14. Anything else?
Someone else had a question, I think. Dr. Ken back there.
Dr. Ken is a longtime friend and associate. So speak loud so our fragile ears can hear. I can't hear. It's in your stentorian best. You're addressing the friends, Romans, and countrymen.
Talk about having love for others, seeing others as we see ourselves.
Yeah.
How does someone, you know, like myself, who spent, you know, most of their life just focused on me, where do we get that compassion from? Where do we, like, I can realize it on an intellectual level, but to feel it like from the heart is something that is just not there. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it isn't. Where does that compassion come from? Where do we get that? I care about it.
So we should, Prabhupada makes a statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we should never think of ourselves as great devotees or preachers or that we're empowered, but that we should always consider ourselves to be humble servants, or attempt to become the humble servant of those who actually have that compassion. And then that's the secret to success. Then we can actually do something for suffering human society. Like Prabhupada, to give some idea of such a great personality, someone sent from the spiritual world, a ray of Vishnu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said that all of you American and European boys and girls my spiritual master arranged for you to take birth where you did, so that you would come forward to help me. And Prabhupada would say that, they would glorify him and say that you have seen the glitter, but my spiritual master is the gold. That because you're helping me to serve my predecessor, my beloved spiritual master, he will bless you thousands of times more than I can. So there's methods how we can help people. The devotees were distributing books in the O'Hare Airport, Chicago O'Hare. Prabhupada actually even instructed his leading devotees to go to the city officials and airport management, O'Hare, which is a name of somebody who was a mayor or somebody in Chicago. You should have them say, it's already O'Hare International Airport. You should simply just take away the O. Oh, you can keep the O and say, Oh, Hare Krishna Airport. Do it. And they were like, come on. I said, do it. And they did it. And they were like, we can't possibly do this. Anyway, so some people who would get the books would just throw them in the garbage. And they would say, well, maybe maybe this isn't such a good thing. And Prabhupada said, they're throwing their infant in the garbage. They're throwing their aborted fetus in the garbage in this Kali Yuga. What can be done? But if they simply touch the book, they will be benefited. Svalpamapi asya dharmasya. Even 1/11th of a second contact with any element or item of pure devotional service is enough to ensure complete perfection. Prashadam, okay, the book, okay, read the book. I don't like this philosophy, but prashadam. Everybody needs to eat. In the time of depression or recession or whatever, who's not going to go out of business? People selling food, and a lot of times they're the ones that make the most money. Like in wartime, like the grocer, kg of rice. Probably in World War II, was like whatever, But all of a sudden it became like, by equivalent, you have to pay like $500 for enough rice to feed 10 people. The inflation just went crazy. So if we give people prashadam, food that's offered to Krishna, and what to speak of the holy name. The holy name is Krishna himself. Prabhupada would say that distributing books and the holy name and prashadam will make a spiritual atmosphere conducive in time for people to accept principles of Krishna consciousness. So back to what we were discussing. What's your name? Yeah. Wilfred. What we're discussing with Wilfred, I grew up as a kid in the 60s. You too? Okay. So here we are, like 50 years later, and a lot of things are just really cool and actually demanded and required by people in general. So when the sun comes up, there's different stages. First, there's heralding of the dawn, and the sky is transforming a little bit and more. And then finally the first rays of the sun come over the horizon. And just to that point, That's enough to scare away all the fear of darkness at night. You remember you walk around New York? No, people are walking around. I have a friend, he lived in Alphabet City in the late 70s, and he was like a tough guy back then, and, he'd make a joke, back then the nightlife was to run for your life, and I was the person that you had to run from, right? So now it's no problem, I've never been, these days, never been mugged or any kind of threat of anything, nothing, walking as in devotional dress, whatever, So, things transform over time. So that fear of darkness at night is vanished. So what to speak of when the full sun in the midday sky, how it lights up and warms the entire world. So this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Check this out. The writer of the Hare musical, that's where I first heard the chanting of Hare Krishna.
Me too.
When the whole ensemble comes out at the first act, just say the good thing that they did, chanting Hare Krishna, how they did it anyway, whatever. But that person met Prabhupada here in 2C in 1966. Said, I'm writing a play, a musical about the hippies. And Prabhupada said, you put the chanting of Hare Krishna in it. And he did that. One might not be expert, but if one turns the screw as an apprentice following the instruction of the master, then that turning of the screw becomes freed from the imperfections of the, material energy. So Prabhupada told him to do this. He followed that instruction. And when I was 13 years old, 1972, I'm hearing that. I was like, wow, And one thing led to the other. Or similarly, someone like George Harrison. So many people came forward to Krishna consciousness. The songs that George Harrison wrote were under Prabhupada's instruction. Songs of separation. I really want to see you. I really want to know you, but it takes so long. My Lord, for whom we so long ignored. The Prabhupada gave all instruction and the proper mood, how to approach Krishna. So, by doing something, you get realization in doing. So you have some experience for sure. You've been on Harinam and sit at the book table sometimes. That's a very good thing. Like I was sitting at the book table today and all these people coming by and I'm trying to so it's like we have book distributors and I'll be at the table, I'll wave or I'll that, and then the book distributor will see that the person made a peace sign wave and they'll go up and talk to them. It's kind of what is it, like football or any type of sports?
Like
one
basketball,
person
someone throws the shot,
deflected in it, yeah.
And then he does that.
Right, like that, And then sitting at the book table, and we have a sign that says books on spiritual knowledge. We used to have a sign that said books on yoga meditation, which is kind of like yoga, meditation, people like yoga. Well, is it going to teach me how to, but to change the sign, books on spiritual knowledge. And when people come up to the table, I say, are you interested in spiritual knowledge? Yeah. It just narrows it down and brings the good people out. And then it's just so simple and so easy, And then when you see the people and the good people, we just read there's 4 types of good people who come forward: the distressed, the inquisitive, those poverty-stricken in need of wealth, and the 4th, which is the best, those who are actually seeking the absolute truth. And Krishna says, of the 4, that he barely dwells in me. That's when you really feel your heart move. And because Krishna, he's directing the wanderings of all living entities, he's in your heart, he's in their heart. It's his work. It's the work of Krishna, it's the work of his pure devotees. So you're engaged in divine sacred activity and you will feel. One time Prabhupada said, how do you know that Krishna is God? And they said, well, it says in the Bhagavad-gita this, and Prabhupada said, no, because you feel it. Another time, Prabhupada debunked the answer when they said, feel. No, because it says in the Shastra. But anyway, that time, feel. You feel something. You feel your heart moving. That's your soul being moved. And there's others out there who who are waiting for it. So Krishna comes for pleasure meeting with the devotees, suppressing the demoniac influence and, putting a monkey wrench and ending this materialistic demoniac. That's secondary. The real thing is to save the devotees and find the good people. And we do that, then Krishna will take care of everything. Any other questions? Should we stop?
There's one more. Is there one more question? Any of the ladies have a question? Equal rights?
Everyone has an equal right. I'll tell an interesting story. Calcutta Temple, when it first founded, and Prabhupada's disciples were kind of raw. Pure devotional service automatically means becoming detached from ephemeral attractions on the bodily platform. So in the beginning, might be like a fanatical brahmachari, this and that. So there was some Prabhupada, he hand chose some of his most qualified disciples to help him in this first wave in India. And amongst the ladies was Yamuna, who was like George Harrison. When he heard her sing, she sang the Govindam. Govindam. She said, wow, I can make you like most famous diva. You imagine being put on Apple Records by the Beatles and being promoted, And she said no, because this would interfere with my devotion to Prabhupada and to Krishna. So Prabhupada chose her. There was Kaushalya, and actually, back then everybody was young. They were attractive. Prabhupada was, one side note, there was like a pandal, and like one kind of Indian man was like coming up to the stage and trying to grab at the women. And Prabhupada, here he is like 73 years old at the time, 74, 75, 1971, and he took his cartels and just like went, to stop this, He was like protecting them as they were his daughters, And actually Malati, she was also there, Shama Sundar's wife at the time. One side note with her was that she was serving Prabhupada in Mayapur, and Prabhupada's godbrothers, very elevated sannyasis, come, and it wasn't really like standard that a female devotee would serve the sannyasis, but Prabhupada did it to set an example, to teach his godbrothers something, how there's equal rights on the spiritual platform. And she was very, very afraid to come before Prabhupada with all these revered godbrothers. Some were like maybe a little critical overall about how Prabhupada was making Krishna consciousness available outside of India, outside what was considered classic Brahmanism all around the world. And and her humility and just her, had like tears in her eyes. She would slit her throat for me, and I would slit her throat for her.
I would slit my throat.
The vice versa.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're on a morning walk, just the men, and they're back in Calcutta. They're saying, there's so many Mataji's around, maybe we should make a separate place. The men will get agitated, this and that. Prabhupada didn't respond at all. And then when they finally came back to the temple, the ladies had stayed behind and done everything, dressed the deities, prepared the Bhoga offering, cleansed the temple, prepared Prabhupada's quarters. When they came in, they all like paid full obeisances, Jai Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada lit up and he said, but if you see these women, you will go back to Godhead. In other words, once one engages in full devotional service, then one is in one's spiritual self. And it doesn't matter the body that we're born in. Actually, the body that we're born in, be it man or woman or the country or the so-called economic or whatever it becomes part of the overall diversified spreading of Krishna consciousness, because whatever physical, mental, emotional situation that we have, there are going to be many other people like us. So we become exemplars of pure devotion, teachers to others for people to get inspired by and follow. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that the Lord does this just like an artist paints a masterpiece labors in creating that, and when he's finally done, perfectionist and consummate artist that he or she is, considers it his or her great personal profit. So the Lord has painted, or put the pigments of the paint of our life and put us together who we are. So on the spiritual platform, it's all equally accepted. Prabhupada would say, Krishna doesn't look at the body, man or woman. He accepts everyone's devotion equally. So that inspired me when he said equal rights. I believe that. I have some realization of that. It's a very nice thing.